The words cut through me like winter wind through a threadbare coat. "You're not invited to the family photo, Sarah," my mother said, not even bothering to look me in the eye as she adjusted her pearl necklace in the mirror. Her tone was casual, as if she were merely commenting on the weather, not excluding her oldest daughter from what would become the portrait hanging above their fireplace for the next decade. I stood frozen in the doorway of her bedroom, the invitation I'd received clutched in my hand. Embossed gold letters announced the family portrait session at Hartwell Studios, scheduled for that Saturday at 2 p.m. An invitation addressed to me, sent to my apartment across town. An invitation my mother apparently never meant for me to receive. "There must be some mistake," I said, my voice embarrassingly small. "I got an invitation." My mother finally turned to face me, her expression a familiar mixture of annoyance and pity. "Your sister Emma must have added you to the mailing list without consulting me." It was thoughtful of her, but misguided. She returned to adjusting her appearance, smoothing invisible wrinkles from her silk blouse. "The photographer charges by the person, and we're already including Robert's new girlfriend. The composition will be crowded as it is." The familiar ache spread through my chest. Robert was my younger brother, and his girlfriend of 3 months was apparently more deserving of a place in the family portrait than I was. "I see," I managed, though I didn't see it all. I was 32 years old and still somehow surprised by my mother's capacity to wound me. "I'll let you finish getting ready then." I turned to leave, dignity intact, but heart splintering, when my mother called after me, "Sarah, wait." For one foolish moment, hope flickered in my chest. "Since you're here, would you mind picking up the dry cleaning? Your father's suit needs to be perfect for tomorrow." I nodded mechanically and left without another word. The dry cleaner was 6 blocks from my parents' Brookline home, a walk I'd made countless times growing up. Now, each step felt like moving through quicksand, my thoughts swirling with decades of similar exclusions, each one explained away with practical reasoning that never quite covered the truth. I was the family disappointment. Not that anyone would say it outright. My parents were too civilized for that. They preferred the death of 1,000 cuts, comparing my B+ to my sister's A, showcasing my brother's athletic trophies while my academic achievements gathered dust in boxes, and now erasing me from the family visual record altogether. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Emma. My sister was 5 years younger, perpetually caught between loyalty to our parents and genuine affection for me. "Sarah, are you okay? Mom just told me you stopped by." I paused on the sidewalk, watching autumn leaves skitter across the pavement. "I'm fine," I lied. "Just picking up Dad's suit for the big photo tomorrow." Emma's hesitation crackled through the connection. "I'm so sorry. I thought if I added your name to the invitation list, Mom would have to include you. I didn't think she'd—" "It's fine," I interrupted, though it was anything but. "Robert's girlfriend needs a spot, apparently. The photographer charges by the person." "That's ridiculous," Emma said, a rare flash of defiance in her voice. "Claudia has been around for what, 12 weeks? This is so unfair." "Life usually is," I said, attempting lightness but hearing the bitterness seep through. "Look, I've got to pick up the dry cleaning. I'll call you later, okay?" I hung up before she could protest, pushing open the door to Premier Cleaners. The familiar chemical smell and soft hum of machinery greeted me, along with Mrs. Chen's surprised smile. "Sarah, long time no see. How is the big city treating you?" I managed a genuine smile in return. Mrs. Chen had always slipped extra fortune cookies into our family's takeout orders when I was a child. "Boston's hardly the big city, Mrs. Chen. I'm just across the river." "Big enough that your mother still picks up your father's shirts alone most weeks." She disappeared into the back and returned with a plastic-wrapped suit. "For tomorrow's portrait?" Your mother was very excited. I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat as I handed over my credit card. Another small indignity paying for the dry cleaning of a suit that would be worn to an event I was explicitly uninvited to. "You're not in the family portrait?" Mrs. Chin asked, her perception uncomfortably sharp. "No, they're at capacity," I said, attempting a smile that felt more like a grimace. Mrs. Chen's eyes softened with understanding. "Their loss," she said, simply handing back my card. "You are always the one with the real smile. Others just show teeth." I clutched the bagged suit to my chest as I left, oddly comforted by the interaction. Mrs. Chen had seen me, really seen me, in a way my own mother never seemed to. Walking back toward my parents' house, I pulled out my phone and called an Uber. I'd leave the suit on the porch with a text message explanation. I couldn't face my mother again today. As I waited on the corner, a gust of wind tousled my hair, and I looked up at a billboard I must have passed 1,000 times without noticing. It was advertising space for rent, the previous ad faded and peeling at the corners. "For lease, prime visibility, call Morgan Outdoor Advertising." Something stirred inside me. A ridiculous, impossible idea. I snapped a photo of the contact information just as my Uber pulled up. "Change of plans," I told the driver after securing my father's suit safely inside. "Can you take me to Morgan Outdoor Advertising instead?" The driver shrugged. "Your dime." Morgan Outdoor Advertising was housed in a converted warehouse in South Boston. Its reception area more stylish than I had expected, with concrete floors and exposed brick walls dotted with scaled-down versions of their most successful campaigns. "Can I help you?" The receptionist glanced up from her computer, her expression politely curious. "I hope so," I said, surprising myself with my steady voice. "I'd like information about the billboard at the corner of Beacon and Summit in Brookline." 20 minutes later, I left with a proposal in hand and a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. The billboard was available immediately. The cost was steep, almost all of the bonus I'd received last quarter for exceeding my sales targets. But somehow that made the decision easier. This wasn't an impulse, it was an investment. Back in my apartment that evening, I stared at my laptop screen, fingers hovering over the keyboard. I'd already contacted Jessie, my photographer friend whose stark, honest portraits had been featured in galleries across New England. She'd agreed to the shoot tomorrow morning, intrigued by my vague explanation of a personal project. Now I just needed to decide exactly what message I wanted to send with this billboard that my family would drive past every day on their way to and from their Brookline home. I was interrupted by my phone ringing, my father this time. "Sarah." His voice held the familiar note of confusion, as if he was perpetually surprised to find himself speaking to me. "Your mother said you picked up my suit, but didn't bring it inside." "It's on the porch, Dad, in the dry cleaning bag." "Oh." A pause. "Well, thank you." I waited for more, perhaps an acknowledgement of tomorrow's exclusion or even an apology, but was met with awkward silence. "Is there anything else?" I finally asked. "No, that's all. Have a good weekend." "Have a good weekend." As if I wasn't aware that their weekend plans explicitly excluded me. After we hung up, I turned back to my laptop with renewed determination. This billboard wouldn't just be a petty response to a single slight. It would be my declaration of independence from decades of being made to feel less than, of contorting myself to fit into spaces too small for my existence. The next morning, Jessie's camera captured me in simple, unadorned honesty. No elaborate styling, no artificial poses. Just me, in a white button-down shirt, looking directly into the lens with all the complex emotions I'd spent years trying to hide. Strength, vulnerability, hurt, and resilience. "These are incredible, Sarah," Jessie said, reviewing the shots. "There's something so compelling about your expression, like you've finally stopped holding your breath." I studied the images, surprised to find I agreed with her. There was a clarity in my eyes I hadn't seen in years, maybe ever. "This one," I said, pointing to a shot where my gaze was particularly direct. "This is the one." By Monday morning, the contract was signed. By Thursday, the installation was complete, and by Friday evening, as my parents drove home from their weekly dinner at the Harbor Club, they would see my face 15 feet tall, looking down at them with clear eyes and a simple message: recognize your worth. I finally did. Sarah Lawson. No company logo. No product being sold. Just my truth. Paid for with my money, displayed on my terms. Emma called within hours of the billboard going up. Oh my God, Sarah. Did you? Yes, I said simply. Mom and Dad are going to lose their minds. Probably, I agreed, surprising myself with how little that prospect bothered me. It's kind of brilliant, Emma said after a moment, a smile in her voice. Completely over the top and possibly insane, but brilliant. Thank you. I think. The family portrait came back. By the way, she added, her tone softening. It looks stiff and weird, and Claudia blinked so she looks possessed. Mom's pretending not to notice. I laughed, genuinely amused by the image. Serves them right. Sarah, Emma hesitated. I should have done more. I should have refused to participate when they excluded you. No, I said firmly. You did what you could by sending me the invitation. This isn't about punishing anyone else. It's about me finally standing up for myself. After we hung up, I walked to my window, gazing out at the city lights. For the first time in as long as I could remember, I felt a curious lightness. I had no idea what would happen next, whether my parents would call in a rage or pretend not to have seen the billboard, or perhaps, though this seemed least likely, reach out with some glimmer of understanding. What I did know was that I had finally externalized the truth I'd been carrying inside for years. I mattered. My absence left a hole in that family portrait, whether they chose to acknowledge it or not. My phone rang again. Unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. Is this Sarah Lawson? A woman's voice asked. Yes, it is. This is Diane Reynolds from Reynolds Media Group. I couldn't help but notice your billboard on Beacon Street. It's causing quite a stir on social media. I'd love to discuss the story behind it for a piece I'm working on. I sat down slowly, processing her words. Social media? Oh, yes. It's been photographed hundreds of times since it went up this morning. The hashtag Recognize Your Earth is trending locally. People are connecting with your message, Ms. Lawson. They're sharing their own stories of standing up for themselves. My private act of defiance wasn't so private after all. The thought was both terrifying and exhilarating. I'd need to think about that, I said carefully. Of course. Take your time. She gave me her contact information before adding, whatever you decide about the interview, what you did was brave. And from what I'm seeing online, it's helping a lot of people feel braver too. After hanging up, I opened Instagram to find my billboard had indeed gone viral locally. Photos of it were accompanied by deeply personal stories. People who had left toxic relationships, stood up to workplace bullying, cut ties with abusive family members, or simply begun setting healthier boundaries. My phone buzzed with a text from Robert, my brother. Bold move, sis. Dad drove past your billboard and nearly crashed the car. Mom's locked herself in her room. Call me when you can. I set the phone down, a complex mix of emotions washing over me. This hadn't been about hurting my parents, but I couldn't deny a small sense of satisfaction that they were finally forced to see me. Really see me. Another text came through, this one from an unknown number. Your billboard made me call my daughter today after 2 years of silence. Thank you for the courage. A regretful mother. Tears sprang to my eyes unexpectedly. My personal statement was becoming something larger, touching lives I'd never imagined reaching. The doorbell rang, startling me from my thoughts. I wasn't expecting anyone. Through the peephole, I saw my mother standing in the hallway, her normally perfect posture slightly stooped, her expression unreadable. I took a deep breath and opened the door. May I come in? She asked, her voice lacking its usual authoritative edge. I stepped aside wordlessly, my heart pounding as she entered my apartment, a space she'd visited only twice in the 3 years I'd lived here. She stood awkwardly in my living room, taking in the bookshelves, the art on the walls, the life I'd built without her input or approval. "Your billboard," she finally said. "It's attention-grabbing." I almost laughed at the understatement. That was the point. Was it necessary to be so public? There was a familiar note of criticism in her voice, but something else too? Uncertainty, perhaps. Was it necessary to exclude me from the family portrait? I countered. She sank onto my couch without being invited, suddenly looking every one of her 64 years. "I've been unfair to you," she said after a long pause, the words clearly difficult for her. For a long time. I remained standing, arms crossed protectively over my chest. "Yes, you have." "You've never been what I expected," she continued. "From the day you were born, you were different, challenging. I didn't know how to handle a daughter who questioned everything, who refused to simply fit in. So you tried to make me invisible instead," I said, years of hurt evident in my voice despite my attempt at control. She looked up at me, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "I was wrong, Sarah. I see that now, quite literally on a 15-foot billboard." A ghost of a smile touched her lips before fading. "But the truth is, I've been seeing it for years. I just didn't know how to admit that I failed you." I sat down across from her, maintaining distance, but finally meeting her eyes directly. "You didn't fail me, Mom. You just never really saw me." "I see you now," she whispered. We sat in silence, the weight of decades between us, neither certain how to bridge the gap. "The photographer is coming back next week," she finally said, "to retake the portrait." Robert's girlfriend blinked in all the shots. She hesitated, then added, "I'd like you to be there, if you want to be." It was a small olive branch, hardly addressing the deeper issues between us. But it was also the first time my mother had ever acknowledged her role in my exclusion, the first hint that change might be possible. "I'll think about it," I said honestly. She nodded, accepting my non-commitment as fair. As she rose to leave, she paused, looking back at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Your father and I drive past that billboard twice a day," she said quietly. "I imagine we will for quite some time." "Yes," I agreed. "You will." After she left, I stood at my window again, watching as she walked to her car. She looked up before getting in, perhaps sensing my gaze, and our eyes met across the distance. She offered a small, tentative wave. I raised my hand in return, not yet ready to forgive, but perhaps, for the first time, ready to consider the possibility of a new beginning. My phone pinged with another notification. The social media storm around my billboard was growing. Whatever happened next with my family, I had sparked something that was taking on a life of its own. People were sharing their stories, finding their voices, recognizing their worth, including me, especially me. That night I couldn't sleep. My mother's unexpected visit had left me restless, caught between long-held resentment and the fragile possibility of change. I'd spent so many years bracing against her judgment that I didn't know how to process this new uncertainty. Was her invitation to the retake genuine or merely damage control for my public statement? By morning, my billboard had been photographed by a local news crew. By afternoon, I had 7 interview requests and over 2,000 new Instagram followers. By evening, #RecognizeYourWorth had evolved into a full-fledged movement, with people posting their own stories of standing up to those who had diminished them. "You've struck a nerve," Jessie said as we sat in my kitchen, scrolling through the responses. "Everyone's got someone in their life who makes them feel invisible." "I never intended to become the poster child for family dysfunction," I replied, both overwhelmed and oddly moved by the outpouring. "Maybe that's exactly why it's resonating," Jessie countered. "It wasn't calculated. It was just honest." My phone rang, again. "Sarah, have you seen the news? You're trending." "So I hear," I said, still processing the surreal turn of events. Mom told us she visited you yesterday. She was different when she came home. Quieter. Emma hesitated. Did she invite you to the portrait retake? She did. And will you come? I sighed, torn between self-protection and the pull of hope. I don't know yet. I think you should, Emma said, surprising me with her directness. Not for her, not even for the family, but for yourself. Show up on your terms. After we hung up, I considered her words. What would it mean to show up on my terms? The old Sarah would have been grateful for the invitation, eager to please, ready to pretend the exclusion had never happened. But I wasn't that person anymore. The woman on the billboard wouldn't settle for scraps of inclusion. My phone chimed with a text from Robert. Mom's in a tailspin. Dad's actually talking about feelings. Who are you, and what have you done with my conflict-avoidant sister? Despite everything, I smiled. Then I texted back, just speaking my truth. Finally. Well, your truth is redecorating our family dynamics. About time, sis. The next day, I agreed to one interview with Diane Reynolds, the journalist who'd first reached out. We met at a quiet cafe near my apartment. So, Sarah, she began after pleasantries, what inspired you to make such a public statement? I considered the question carefully. It wasn't any single moment, I finally said. It was a lifetime of moments where I was made to feel that my presence was an inconvenience. The family portrait was just the final straw. And the reaction has been overwhelming, hasn't it? Why do you think so many people are connecting with your message? I think, I said slowly, we all want to be truly seen. Not the version of ourselves that makes others comfortable, but our authentic selves. And when that doesn't happen, especially with the people who are supposed to love us most, it creates a wound that never quite heals. Diane nodded, jotting notes. Your mother has reached out to my publication with a statement. Would you like to hear it? My breath caught. She did what? It's unusual, I know, but she was quite insistent. Diane pulled out her phone. She writes. The billboard my daughter Sarah created speaks to a failure on my part that I am only beginning to understand. While I would have preferred to address our family matters privately, I respect her choice to express her feelings in her own way. I am listening now, though I should have listened much sooner. Tears sprang to my eyes, unexpected and unwelcome. My mother, who guarded our family image with militant zeal, had publicly acknowledged her role in my pain. It wasn't a full apology, but from a woman who had never admitted fault in her life, it was seismic. Would you like to respond? Diane asked gently. I shook my head, still processing. Not right now. I need time to think. After the interview, I walked aimlessly through the city, eventually finding myself at the public garden. I sat by the lagoon, watching families navigate the swan boats, parents steadying wobbling children, teenagers pretending indifference while secretly enjoying themselves, the complex ecosystem of family dynamics playing out in miniature. My phone rang, my father this time. Sarah. His voice sounded different, less certain than usual. I drove past your billboard again today. I imagine you'll be seeing it for the next 4 weeks. That's how long the contract runs. Yes, well, he cleared his throat. It's quite effective. I nearly drove off the road the first time I saw it. Despite myself, I smiled. That wasn't my intention. No, I suppose not. He paused. Your mother tells me she invited you to the portrait retake. She did. I hope you'll come, he said, surprising me. The first one, it wasn't right without you. Then why didn't you say something? I asked the question that had burned inside me for days, finally finding voice. When Mom excluded me, why didn't you object? The silence stretched between us, heavy with decades of unspoken truths. Because I'm a coward, Sarah, he finally admitted, his voice barely audible. I've always taken the path of least resistance with your mother. It was easier to go along than to stand up for what was right. even when it hurt you. Especially when it hurt you. His raw honesty stunned me. In all my years, I'd never heard my father speak with such painful self-awareness. I don't know if I can forgive that easily, I said truthfully. I'm not asking for easy forgiveness, he replied. I'm just asking for a chance to do better, starting with having you in the family portrait where you belong. After we hung up, I sat for a long time, watching the swan boats circle the lagoon, considering what it would mean to show up for the retake. Not as the grateful daughter, desperate for inclusion. Not as the angry outsider, armed for battle, but as the woman on the billboard, the one who recognized her own worth. The rest of the week passed in a blur of social media notifications, supportive messages from strangers, and a growing sense that something fundamental had shifted, not just in my family, but in my understanding of myself. Saturday arrived, the day of the portrait retake. I woke early, anxiety fluttering in my chest as I considered my options. I could still refuse to go, maintaining the boundary I'd established with my billboard. Or I could show up, not seeking validation, but offering the possibility of a new beginning on more equal terms. As I deliberated, a notification appeared on my phone, a text from an unknown number with a photo attached. I opened it to find an image of my billboard, but something had changed. Someone had projected additional words onto the building wall beside it, expanding my message, "Recognize your worth." I finally did. Sarah Lawson. And so can you. The text read, "Your courage gave me mine. Thank you." Tears filled my eyes as I realized the true impact of what I'd started. This wasn't just about my family anymore. It had become something larger, a permission slip for others to claim their own value. In that moment, my decision crystallized. I would go to the portrait session, not out of obligation or even forgiveness, but because hiding away would contradict everything the billboard stood for. The woman who had declared her worth to the world couldn't shrink from facing her family in person. I dressed carefully in a deep blue dress that made me feel strong, applied minimal makeup, and left my hair in its natural waves rather than straightening it as I normally would for family functions. Today, I would be authentically myself. Hartwell Studios was housed in a converted mill building, its high ceilings and abundant natural light making it a favorite for family portraits. As I approached the entrance, my steps slowed. Through the window, I could see them already assembled. My mother in pale pink, my father in his freshly dry-cleaned suit, Emma in green, Robert in navy, and his girlfriend Claudia in cream. They looked like a perfect family portrait already. For a fleeting moment, the old doubt crept in. Maybe there wasn't room for me after all. Then I remembered the billboard, the messages, the unexpected ripples of change I'd created. I squared my shoulders and pulled open the door. The conversation inside stopped abruptly as I entered. 5 pairs of eyes turned to me. Expressions ranging from relief, Emma, to uncertainty, my mother, to something like pride, Robert. "Sarah," my mother said, rising from her seat. "You came." "I did," I replied simply. An awkward silence descended, no one quite sure how to proceed after the events of the past week. The photographer, a slender man with kind eyes, broke the tension. Perfect timing. I was just about to arrange everyone. He looked at me directly. "You must be Sarah. I've been keeping a spot for you in the center of the composition." I blinked in surprise. "The center?" "Of course," he said as if it were obvious. "Your mother was quite specific about your placement." I glanced at my mother, who was studiously avoiding my gaze. Her cheeks flushed. Had she instructed him to place me at the heart of the family? The gesture, so small and yet so significant, caught me off guard. As we arranged ourselves under the photographer's direction, my parents seated, the rest of us standing behind them, me indeed positioned centrally, I felt a strange sense of unreality. After years of being pushed to the periphery, I was being pulled to the core. "Perfect," the photographer declared. "Now everyone relax. This isn't a Victorian daguerreotype. You're allowed to look like you actually like each other." A ripple of nervous laughter broke the tension. As the photographer worked, capturing various configurations and expressions, I gradually felt myself adjusting to this new reality. Present included central. During a break, while the photographer adjusted his lighting, my mother approached me, her movements hesitant. "The blue suits you," she said, gesturing to my dress. "You always did look best in jewel tones." It was such a typical mother comment, yet delivered with unusual gentleness. "Thank you," I said, unsure how to navigate this new, fragile dynamic. "Sarah," she began, then stopped, visibly struggling. My mother, always composed, seemed to be searching for words, a rare vulnerability. "Your billboard. It's made me realize how much I've failed to see you. Truly see you." I waited, giving her space to continue. "I've spent my life trying to shape my children into versions I understood. Emma was easy. She naturally fit the mold I recognized. Robert fought me openly, which I at least comprehended. But you," she shook her head. "You were always different, thoughtful, questioning. I didn't know what to do with a daughter who saw the world so differently from me." "So you tried to make me invisible," I said, echoing our conversation from days earlier. "Yes," she admitted, the single word containing decades of acknowledgement. "And when that didn't work, I tried to push you to conform. When that failed too, I began to exclude you. It was easier than facing my own limitations as a mother." I swallowed against the tightness in my throat. I just wanted to be accepted for who I am. "I know that now," she said softly. "Your billboard made that impossible to ignore. 15 feet tall, forcing me to look at the daughter I failed to see properly." The photographer called us back to our positions before I could respond. As we resumed the portrait session, I felt a curious lightness spreading through me. My mother's words weren't a complete healing of our relationship. That would take time and much more conversation. But they were an opening, a crack in the wall that had stood between us for so long. After the session concluded, we gathered our belongings in a strange, tentative truce. "Brunch," my father suggested, his hopeful tone betraying how important this potential family gathering was to him. I hesitated, then nodded. I could eat. The restaurant was just a few blocks away, an upscale place with white tablecloths and discreet service. As we settled around the table, me between Emma and Robert, my parents and Claudia across from us, the conversation flowed with surprising ease. Claudia, I discovered, was actually quite nice when not being used as an unwitting replacement for me. She worked in environmental law and shared my love of documentaries. "So, Sarah," my father said during a lull, "your billboard has caused quite a stir. The comments section on the Globe's article about it is lively." "You read the comments section?" Robert asked, grinning. "Dad, that's internet rule number 1. Never read the comments." "Well, in this case, I wanted to understand the reaction," my father replied, surprisingly earnest. "And it's been eye-opening. So many people have similar stories. It's made me realize that what happened in our family isn't unique, just uniquely visible thanks to Sarah's creativity." "Creative is one word for it," my mother murmured, but without the sharp edge her comments usually carried. Emma leaned toward me. "I showed my therapy group a photo of it," she confessed quietly. 3 people cried. I hadn't known Emma was in therapy. Another reminder of how disconnected we'd become despite our occasional closeness. Robert raised his water glass. "To Sarah, who finally figured out how to get through to this family by going public with 15 feet of truth." "Robert," my mother warned, but I caught the hint of a reluctant smile at the corner of her mouth. "It's okay," I said, surprising myself. "He's not wrong." As we continued our meal, I observed this tableau of my family with new eyes. They weren't suddenly perfect. My mother still made subtle, critical comments. My father still retreated into silence when tensions rose. But something had undeniably shifted. The billboard had made it impossible to maintain the polite fiction that everything was fine, that I was fine with being sidelined. After brunch, as we prepared to part ways, my mother touched my arm lightly. "The portraits will be ready next week," she said. "I thought perhaps you might come to the house to see them. Maybe for dinner." A month ago, I would have eagerly accepted this crumb of inclusion. Today, I took a breath and set a boundary. I'd like to see the portraits, but I think one-on-one might be better for now. Perhaps we could meet for coffee instead. A flash of disappointment crossed her face, then understanding. "Coffee would be lovely," she agreed. "Just the two of us." As I walked toward my car, Emma fell into step beside me. "That was massive," she said. "Mom suggesting coffee? Just the two of you?" I don't think she's had a one-on-one conversation with anyone voluntarily since 1992. I laughed. "Baby steps." "Gigantic baby steps," Emma corrected. "And it's all because you refused to stay invisible." She hugged me tightly before pulling back to meet my eyes. "I'm so proud of you, Sarah. I always have been, but now you're finally proud of yourself, too. It shows." Back at my apartment, I found myself drawn to the window, gazing out at the city as I had so often during the past tumultuous days. My phone pinged with a notification, another message from someone who had seen my billboard. "I left my husband of 22 years today after seeing your billboard. He's been telling me I'm worthless for 2 decades. Today I finally stopped believing him. Thank you." I sat heavily on my couch, the weight of these connections settling around me. My personal act of rebellion had sparked something I never could have anticipated. On Monday morning, I returned to work at the marketing firm where I'd been steadily climbing the ranks for the past 5 years, though always careful not to outshine others or draw too much attention to myself. The familiar pattern of self-diminishment felt impossible now, after everything that had happened. "Sarah." My boss, Meredith, appeared in my office doorway. "Do you have a minute?" I nodded, bracing myself. I'd been so caught up in the Billboard fallout that I hadn't considered how my sudden notoriety might affect my professional life. Meredith closed the door behind her. "So that Billboard." "Yes," I acknowledged. "That's mine." To my surprise, she broke into a wide smile. "It's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. The visual impact, the simplicity of the message, the emotional resonance, it's everything we try to create for clients, except you did it for yourself." I blinked, processing her reaction. "You're not concerned about the company being associated with personal drama?" "Are you kidding? Our phone has been ringing nonstop. 2 potential clients specifically asked for the firm with the billboard woman. You've accidentally created the most effective advertisement for our services I've ever seen." She leaned forward eagerly. "We need to capitalize on this momentum. I'm thinking of putting you in charge of our new authenticity-focused campaign division." "I what?" "People are hungry for genuine connection, Sarah. Your billboard proved that. I want you to help our clients tap into that same energy, authentic messaging that resonates on a deeper level." By the end of the day, I had a new title, a raise, and a team of 3 junior marketers assigned to work with me on developing this new approach. The woman who had been deliberately making herself smaller for years was now being asked to expand, to lead, to shine. The irony wasn't lost on me. That evening, as I walked home, I took a detour to see my billboard in person. Standing across the street, looking up at my own face, I felt a curious sense of completion. The woman in the image gazed back at me with calm certainty, as if to say, "This is just the beginning." My phone rang, Diane Reynolds. "Sarah, the response to your story has been overwhelming. We've had requests from 3 national morning shows for interviews, and a book agent wants to talk to you about a potential memoir." I laughed in disbelief. "A memoir? I'm 32, and I just put up 1 billboard." "It's not about the billboard anymore," she said earnestly. "It's about what it represents. People are desperate for stories about standing in your truth, especially women who've been conditioned to make themselves smaller. Your experience has universal resonance. After we hung up, I continued staring at the billboard, contemplating this unexpected turn in my life's narrative. I had never sought public attention. My goal had been much simpler, to be truly seen by my own family. Now strangers were seeing me, connecting with my story, finding courage in my small act of defiance. Was I ready for that responsibility? Did I want it? A text message from my mother interrupted my thoughts. Your father and I drove past the billboard again today. I'm beginning to see something new in your expression each time. Perhaps that's the point. I smiled, tucking my phone away. Perhaps that was indeed the point, that really seeing someone is an ongoing process, never complete, always evolving. The following weekend, I met my mother for coffee as planned. She arrived exactly on time, immaculately dressed as always, but with a subtle difference in her demeanor, a slight uncertainty that had never been there before. She placed a large envelope on the table between us. The portraits came out well, she said, sliding it toward me. I opened it carefully, pulling out the glossy 8x10s. The photographer had captured us in various groupings, but the main portrait showed all 6 of us arranged exactly as he had positioned us that day, my parents seated, the rest of us standing behind them, me in the center. What struck me most wasn't the composition, but the expressions. In family portraits past, we had all worn careful masks, pleasant, appropriate, and utterly disconnected from our true feelings. But in these images, something authentic shone through. My father's pride, Emma's affection, Robert's irreverent humor, even my mother's complex mix of regret and hope, and me, central, present, and unapologetically myself. They're beautiful, I said honestly. My mother nodded, studying the images with a critical eye that softened as she looked at them longer. Yes, they are. The photographer said they're the most genuine family portraits he's taken in years. She met my gaze directly. I think that's because of you, Sarah. Your billboard changed something fundamental in all of us. I never intended to cause such upheaval, I admitted. Didn't you? She raised an eyebrow, a ghost of her old sharpness returning. 15 feet of your face on Beacon Street seems designed for maximum impact. I laughed despite myself. Okay, perhaps I wanted to make a statement, but I didn't expect everything that followed. None of us did. She stirred her coffee thoughtfully. The portrait will be delivered next week, the large one for the living room. I'd like you to help me decide where to hang it. The invitation was more than just about interior decorating. It was an acknowledgement that my perspective mattered, that my place in the family was not peripheral but essential. I'd like that, I said. As our conversation continued, touching carefully on decades of misunderstanding and misconnections, I realized we were engaging in a kind of portraiture of our own, sketching the outlines of a new relationship, neither of us certain of the final image, but both committed to seeing it through. 2 more weeks passed. My billboard continued to generate conversation. My new position at work flourished, and my tentative reconciliation with my family progressed in small, meaningful steps. I had coffee with my mother twice more, dinner with my father once, movie night with Emma and Robert. Then came the call I'd been half expecting, half dreading since Diane's mention of national media interest. Good Morning America wants you for Thursday, Diane said without preamble. They're doing a segment on everyday courage, and your billboard story is perfect. Are you in? The old Sarah would have declined immediately, uncomfortable with such exposure. The billboard Sarah might have jumped at the validation. The woman I was becoming took a breath and considered what such a platform might mean, not just for me, but for others struggling to be seen. Yes, I decided. I'm in. The studio was simultaneously smaller and more overwhelming than I'd imagined. A maze of cables, lights, and earnest production assistants with clipboards. I was ushered through hair and makeup, mic'd, briefed, and positioned on a stool beside the host, Amanda Chin, whose warmth seemed genuine even under the blinding studio lights. We're speaking today with Sarah Lawson. Amanda began after the introduction package played, showing images of my billboard and social media responses to it. Sarah, your story has touched thousands of people. What compelled you to make such a bold statement? I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of all those watching, strangers who had connected with my experience, and somewhere in Brookline, perhaps my family. It wasn't planned, I said honestly. It was a moment of clarity after years of feeling invisible in my own family. Being excluded from the family portrait was just the final push I needed to declare my own worth, not just to them, but to myself. And the response has been overwhelming, hasn't it? I nodded, completely unexpected. I've heard from people who left abusive relationships, who stood up to workplace bullying, who reconnected with estranged family members. It's humbling to think that my personal moment of defiance could spark that kind of courage in others. And your family? How have they responded to seeing your face on a billboard every day? I smiled, thinking of my mother's gradual thawing, my father's halting attempts at deeper connection, my siblings' newfound respect. It's been complicated, as family always is, but the billboard made it impossible to maintain the status quo. It forced conversations we'd been avoiding for decades. Would you say it healed your relationship with them? I wouldn't go that far, I said carefully. Healing is a process, not an event, but it created an opening for genuine change. For the first time, we're seeing each other clearly, all of us, including me. The interview continued, touching on the cultural resonance of my message and the unexpected professional opportunities that had followed. As we wrapped up, Amanda asked one final question. Your billboard contract ends next week. Do you plan to renew it? I shook my head, smiling. No, it served its purpose. The message is out there now, living in all the people who've connected with it. Besides, I added, I think my family has gotten the point. After the segment aired, my phone exploded with messages, friends, former classmates, distant relatives, and hundreds of strangers, sharing their own stories of standing up for themselves. But the one I noticed most was from my mother. You were eloquent. I'm proud of you. 5 simple words that would have meant everything to me a few months ago. Now they were important, but not essential. My sense of worth no longer depended on her approval. The following week, as promised, the billboard company replaced my face with an advertisement for a local credit union. The physical manifestation of my statement was gone, but its impact remained in the stories people continued to share online, in my newly confident approach to work and relationships, and in the shifting dynamics of my family. When the large family portrait was delivered to my parents' home, my mother kept her word. I helped her select its placement, not in the formal living room where guests would see it, but in the family room where we actually spent time together. As we hung it, my mother stood back, studying the image with a critical eye. It's different from any portrait we've ever had, she observed. Is that good or bad? I asked. She considered for a moment. It's true, she finally said. And truth is always better than pretense, even when it's less comfortable. Coming from my mother, who had spent a lifetime curating a perfect family image, this was revolutionary. That evening, as we gathered for dinner, the first time all 6 of us had been together since the portrait session, I looked around the table and saw my family clearly, not perfect, not suddenly healed of all our dysfunctions, but real, present, engaged in the messy, complicated process of truly seeing each other, perhaps for the first time. My phone pinged with a final message from Diane. Your billboard may be gone, but #RecognizeYourWorth is still trending. You've started something that's taking on a life of its own. I smiled, setting my phone aside to rejoin the conversation. My face might no longer look down from that corner of Beacon and Summit, but its message had been received by strangers who needed to hear it, by my family who had finally been forced to see me, and most importantly by the woman who had dared to declare her own worth to the world. Me.